the main mandate of what a man is comes now from what is in the book of Genesis, and you pointed out that the earth, that he might have dominion and rulership over, and it is not what you are called, but what you answer to that defines you and maps out your destiny. That was like a powerful thing to read. And it says, I therefore submit that a man is king.
Yeah. And the idea is, for example, it doesn't matter how amazing of a man society thinks I am.
Okay.
It counts for nothing if my wife and my daughters live in constant fear of who I am, or live in not knowing where dad is, or do not even know whether I care for them, or I'm proud of them, or I support them, or I'm present with them.
Yeah.
So to the whole world, I could be the most amazing man.
Yeah.
It counts for nothing.
Gotta love one another. Gotta love one another. Gotta love one another. Welcome to episode 6 of the Grace and Glow Up podcast. I'm your host. My name is Ivy Kashero. And to be honest, the fact that I've even been this consistent to make it to episode 6 shows you that the grace of God is truly sufficient. If you're new to the podcast, you know that the podcast is dedicated to empowering individuals through faith, leadership, and personal growth, so that we can create a space where people can have conversations that inspire people to live with purpose, as well as embrace grace and pursue their God-given potential. Today, I don't even want to take a lot of time getting into it, but today I have a special guest. As we've seen in the previous episodes, I really appreciate the engagement and the people who managed to share the videos. But one of the things I'm constantly reiterating with regards to the guests that I've been having in this season have been primarily focused on just giving you a glimpse in terms of the people I have conversations with who edify me, so that I can also share the kind of encouragement, knowledge, and wisdom that I get from these individuals, and also people whose stories have also edified me and educated me into the perspectives and some of the ideas that I have. So welcome to the podcast, Barak.
Sana, thank you very much. Like you heard, my name is Barak. I'm one of the pastors at Fellowship Dubai Church, where Ivy attends. And first of all, even before I get into intros, Yanni, congratulations.
Thank you.
This is so amazing, and I'm so proud of you. It's really, really cool what you're doing here.
I'm humbled.
And then, so it's just, one, I'm excited to be here, to be part of the podcast as well. I hope it will be usable. So if you see this, it was usable.
if it makes it to the social media.
Yeah, so other than being a pastor, I'm a full-time dad. That I love saying that. I have 2 beautiful and amazing daughters that I love dearly, and they run my life. And I also have an amazing wife as well, and I'm married as well. Been here in Dubai for the last 8 years, and actually that's how we ended up connecting with Ivy. Knowing each other as well.
Yeah. I mean, mutual friends, and then I guess because we are just both low-key chatterboxes.
Yes, so. Exactly.
So this podcast anticipate a lot of that.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I'm really glad to have you on the episode. The reason why I had Barak on the episode is because you do a lot of work with regards to the younger generation of men and maybe within our age group, millennials and Gen Zs.
Yeah.
And because a huge number of my audience is within that demography.
Yeah.
That demography. Yeah. You figure what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that while we're having this discussion that we could also try and address some of the challenges, some of the learnings that you've come across within your work, as well as, your own experience. And because I know there's, we've had this conversation on the side, and you've mentioned that there's been an evolution in terms of perspective with regards to the book that you wrote earlier on. So I wanted to read something just so that this will be an opener to our discussion. Barak wrote a book a few years ago, and this is the title of the book. It's called All the King's Men. Amazing. I mean, for me, it's an amazing read. But I think from Barak's point of view, we've had a discussion around the evolution of perspectives, and hopefully we can discuss those.
Yeah.
But something that stood out for me I think this was written by Reverend Nick Corey, because he wrote your
My
forward.
yeah.
This is what he'd written in the beginning. He said, I am male because I was born male. I am a man because I've been made one.
Yeah.
He says, males are born, men are made.
Yeah.
Men are baked through the oven of time and are formed through the circumstances and the situations they go through in life, which basically just, says what we have had a discussion around.
Yeah.
So it says that All the King's Men is a classic depiction of these two factors, people and choices, and that are the key ingredients in the composition of a man. It's a choice to be a man. It's a choice to embrace new thoughts, new actions, new attitudes, new dreams, and most importantly, a new identity that makes one a man.
Yeah. First of all, I love what Pastor Nick wrote. Pastor Nick is just one of those guys who is sitting with him just opens your mind, because he just thinks through things very differently. But like you said, for me, what I consider with the book in particular, and what I was saying about perspectives changing, is I feel like if knowing what I know now, I would rewrite the book. There's a lot I would redo about the book. The concept, I love the concept. I love the idea behind the concept. I love the reasons why I wrote the book would remain. But the way my delivery would change. I was young when I wrote the book. I'm older now. There is a sense. I was 26 years old when I wrote the book. 25. So I was 26 when it was published. Looking back at what, like, I had no business writing about manhood at the age of 26. Like, there was so much about becoming
you are a man.
I was, but there's so much. there's so much. Like, there's a lot that I've come to know now. And there is still so much more to learn. And I like the hubris of youth. I like the hubris of being 26 and thinking I'm just because I'm a man, I'm able to write this book. I love that. And I love that sense of being able to do such a thing. But I wish I waited a few years to write, because there's some thoughts I would rewrite and I would rethink.
Changes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
However, I love the book.
So and this is the reason why we're having the discussion, because I mean, there's a mix of, because what I'm also keen on having is there's a mix of what truth is, and then there's also like experiences that you've had that shape sort of the ideologies that are within the book. And there's also, even based off what what we just read, it mentioned there's the expectation of evolution of choices, mindsets changing within a man's journey. And so hopefully we could be able to address that. What I wanted us to discuss is focusing on different aspects of the I don't want to say manosphere, because I was about to say, hey, this will take us on a different tangent. But I want to focus on different aspects, the mental health and well-being aspect of things, career and purpose for individuals, and then just relationships and modern dating. I'll pick a few sort of questions that can sort of drive our discussion, and then we can take it from there. One was, why do men still struggle to talk about mental health despite the growing awareness? While 77% of men say that they've suffered from mental health challenges, only 40% seek help. And then there's been stories. There's been the story of Kevin Love and Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. They opened up about their struggles with depression. So if the conversations are already being had, why the struggle with now that we know what the problem is going for the solution?
Yeah, okay. So let's start off with looking at someone like the people you've mentioned, Kevin Love, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and all those people who've even, like someone like Trevor Noah talks a lot about mental health. Notice they are in a position of power and authority. So much so that by them talking about it, it makes it easier for them, but it makes it harder for the regular guy on the street to talk about mental health. It becomes harder for the person who their revelation of struggling with mental health will have greater consequence compared to someone like Trevor Noah talking about.
Because for them it's more it comes with, probably from a celebrity standpoint, it comes with, how do I put it? You can be applauded for
Yes, it even increases their celebrity.
Yes.
Their vulnerability is seen as a strength,
Yes.
whereas for the man who's coming up, their vulnerability is seen as a weakness. And that's one of the things that people have to consider every single day. And when you look at someone who is trying to figure out, how do I handle my mental health? First of all, you have to consider the question of culture, the question of community, the question of the people who are around you as well. So think about it this way. I love joking, saying how mental health and depression are not an African problem. And the joke is that it's a racist thing in this quote unquote, in the sense that it only affects certain people,
individuals. I mean, that's how we see it as a culture.
That's how we see it as a culture. But the reason we see it that way is because the moment you admit to having mental health problems in a certain context, as an African, for example, it becomes a problem of your whole family. That whole family has mental health issues, or it becomes an issue where it changes even how society views you. So it's not an issue of men seeking help. It's an issue of a whole community and a whole society coming together and saying, actually, this is a value we have as a community. If I am not well, all of us are not well. Therefore, let us stand together to figure this out. But the problem becomes when one man stands up and says, I am struggling with my mental health. How does the community view it? So is it important that people let me use the example of Trevor Noah, because again, he is African and that helps. So if we use the example of someone like Trevor Noah, is it good that he speaks about mental health? Absolutely. It is excellent and amazing, because it actually brings the question closer home. And it makes it easier for others to talk about it, brings the conversation to the fore, and it no longer becomes taboo to talk about mental health.
So I'm one of the things I'm actually now thinking about is it does because I do know there are different, so because there's confidentiality when it comes to like seeking help with these particular things would you say now, based off even in the context of the culture here in Dubai, have you seen an increase in terms of the men that now come seeking help and solutions to this problem? Because UAE has a lot of challenges of its own, just being where we are and the fast-pacedness of the city, and the idea that our jobs, everything is just pegged to whether we are able to provide or not. What has been your experience now, based off what you know from a Kenyan perspective, and then now being here, where you're meeting people from all walks of life? Does the perspective change? Does the embracing of solutions change?
So first of all, solutions are not equal everywhere. Going back to, if you think about the number of mental health professionals available and the cost barrier, like the cost of even seeking psychological support, for some that's not even an option. It becomes some guys will even say, I would rather deal with this when I have the finances to deal with this, when I'm able to pay for it. Like, I am not wealthy enough to be depressed.
It's like there's a funny meme that was going around the idea of like things like physical, going to the gym and wellness. Those are for people who want to live long because they have the money and
they have the ability to do so.
To sustain,
and even the idea of talking about mental health becomes a wealth question, not a mental health question, where you say, I need to have the finances for me to even consider being mentally unstable right now, or to deal with depression, or to deal with ADHD, or to deal with bipolar. I have to have a certain financial status to even consider that this could be a problem I'm facing because of the cost associated with it. That's one. And then two is the idea that going back to the idea of culture,
Yeah.
for me, for example, as an African man, going to a counselor who does not understand African culture
Is
to
that-
explain to them what I'm going through and the impact this is having on me, my community, my society, my family, all these things.
And your whole identity.
And my whole identity, even before we start talking about depression.
issue,
Like
yeah.
there's so many layers.
Nuances.
That they may not understand. And that's not to
Yeah.
say that a counselor or a psychologist who's not African may not be able to handle it. That's not to say. It is just to say that there are more barriers than we want to acknowledge there are.
Yeah, so meaning even finding a solution means you tackle one thing and then you still have to deal with something else along the lines.
Yeah.
Wow. I hadn't thought about that actually. So in this case, because I was going to ask you now following that, is like, so are we saying that society then makes it difficult for men to be vulnerable? Because there's this whole debate where when we tell men to open up, yet when men do open up, then they face backlash. So there's like, okay, fine, if you're not going to seek a therapist, you can speak to someone.
Yeah.
But when a man finally opens up, so one of the things I'm trying to get to is like, so where do then men seek help when it comes to these particular things? Like, if I'm a guy, let's say listening now, so now this is my situation, I don't have money, and then I'm not quite, my boys can't have this conversation.
Yeah.
What would you say are like practical, simple options of things I could explore from
Yeah. So first of all, the expectations on men and the lack of expectations as well are interlinked or intertwined. This situation where I was watching a YouTube video of a guy saying how he's a car YouTuber and he was talking about how he can't even buy a Tesla to show off. Because if he buys, someone will say he's supporting
a specific brand.
A specific brand and a specific person because of the boss of Tesla right now.
Yeah.
So he can't say anything bad about the car because those who love the guy will talk badly about him. And then if he says something good about the car, those who hate the guy will say something.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a lose-lose situation. And same thing with manhood, where talking about this is what a man is supposed to be, or this is how a man is supposed to be, is a lose-lose situation. Where, for example, when you present a strong male figure, the question then becomes, where do we draw the line between being a strong male figure and toxic masculinity? So where do we draw that line? And is there anything like being masculine in a way that honors both your manhood and the people around you? And so again, what's the balance? So those are the questions society needs to grapple with. And while society is grappling with those questions and trying to figure out even how we talk about manhood to the next generation, because the problem is not my generation. The problem is not the generation that is online right now. The problem is the generation that is being raised by the generation that is online right now. This problem will come to a head 10, 15 years from now, when the younger men are growing older and they don't know who they're supposed to be because they've constantly been told men don't do that, men do this. Men don't do this, they do that. And so
when they start doing this, they say don't do that
exactly.
now.
So that's where the problem will be. So again, for the question of someone who's watching right now thinking to themselves, one, I know I'm struggling with my mental health. And then two, I don't even have the finances. What you're talking about is true, and I don't even have the boys to figure this out with this. I think a few things. One is just you taking the step to figure out, how am I doing? You doing an inventory for yourself, first of all, to know exactly how you're doing, one. And then two, figuring out ways that you can do step by step. Like, for example, you don't need to go to a gym to work out.
You can watch some YouTube videos.
Yes, you can figure it out. You can go for a long walk. You can do certain things. There's certain things you can do. And we live in the information age where there is so much information online. Access to info is there, where you could actually figure out ways to, little by little, take steps towards health without harming yourself or without taking steps steps towards self
without depending on, or without going to complete extremes.
Exactly.
So you were saying something around the intertwining of where do you draw the line between toxic masculinity and embracing your manhood? And I had read something that was in the book that I found. So there's a statement that was in the book that said, all the king's men challenges the true concept of masculinity and asks what a real man is and what he is made of. So since you've mentioned this, so then what would you say is the idea of a real man? Because there's this whole high value man conversation online. What would you say a kingdom value man?
I think I would boil it down to one word. Present.
Okay.
That's like, sometimes we put so many barriers to becoming a real man that we forget how to simplify it. And the simple term would be present. Like, your child needs a father. He doesn't need a father who has money. He just needs a father who is present.
In fact, he doesn't probably understand money.
Completely. Your spouse, first and foremost, over and above everything else, they need you to be present. They need you to be present. And by being present, it means being awake in that moment. Like, if we're having a conversation, may I be there, present in the moment, talking to you, paying attention. Just that sense of presence is so important that it changes everything. Your child is impacted more by you showing up to the sports day they're having than by you paying school fees or for you paying that sport.
Buying toys.
Exactly. Your presence there is what matters. So if you could boil it down to one word, and the simplest thing you can start with is just being present. Now, the question therefore becomes, again, going back to society, is presence enough? No. Not often. But the question is, you're not a man to the whole of society. You are a man to your spouse or your wife or your girlfriend or whoever is in your life. So be present as such. Your mother needs you to be present as a son. Just to see that you're okay, you're well, you're there is more important. Society, by the way, can go climb a mountain. We don't care. It's you as a man,
if
be
you feel
present.
like, are you living, it's the idea of, are you content to the fullness of self with what you bring to the table as you? Then we can talk about all the sideshows after. But are you bringing your full self to the table?
And even if you're not bringing your full self to the table, you just showing up to the table
is enough.
Let's start off with saying that's enough. And being present is actually part of the process of saying, I realize that me being here right now may not be enough, and therefore, what can I do to add to it? There's a school in Kenya that has a motto. I'll say it in Swahili, then I'll translate it. And the motto is Jishinde Ushinde, and it translates to better your best, or if you keep bettering your best, you will keep winning. That's the idea. The idea is, and so the idea is, start first by being present, and then onto that add.
You can continue adding.
Keep adding. But the most important key is presence. Just be there.
So one of the things with regards to that, what you just mentioned, is when I look at like communications online and things that people are discussing online, it's heavily centered on emotions and the ability for men to, be emotionally present and communicate emotions, in a mature sense, and at the same time also the idea that men are not emotional. So it's like with communication to men, it's the same. It's like saying, I need to express my emotions, but then I should also factor in that I'm speaking to someone who apparently doesn't understand emotions. Do you? Because I tend to disagree with that ideology, because I've met men who understand and communicate emotions. Like they are able to articulate, this is how I feel. When you communicate, they understand the same. So is this, what is the challenge? Is it like society? Is it that the society, men's society, is choosing to not accept this as something that needs work, so that they don't take accountability for it? Or is it, are we just saying that this is just, it's a huge expectation to put on an individual that they cannot have?
I think what happens is, and again, I should have started off with saying most of these things are just opinions, and these are my opinions, and this is this is what I believe.
And we'll have to put the disclaimer on the beginning of the episode that the information on this episode are solely the opinions of the individuals.
That the individuals, and do not reflect on the organization or the podcast as well.
Yeah.
But it's the idea that we like blanketing men when it is bad, but we like individualizing success when it's good. So we will say men are not emotional. That's a bad thing. So it'll be a blanket statement. But then when you meet a few guys who are emotional or who talk and listen and do all those things, you'll say it is these few people who do this, who are good at this. But then if you meet someone who insults you, who treats you badly, you will say all men are dogs. So we blanket negative and we individualize the positive. So that's how society has acted towards men. And even if you look at social media, it often just talks about how Kenyan men are like this, Nigerian men are like this, American men are like this, and we blanket everyone, forgetting that emotional intelligence is a question of upbringing. So not a question of is he a man or a woman. It's a question of
everyone needs to be intelligent
emotionally. It's a question of how are you brought up. So that it's not if I talk in a way that is rude to you, it's not a question of me being a man. It's a question of me being mannerless. Period.
Forget gender.
Forget gender. It's not a question of gender. And in the same way, when women make mistakes, we don't say it's all women. We say it's this particular person really doesn't know. So the weight of responsibility that has been placed on men's shoulders is extreme, whereas we're not complaining that it's extreme, because that's expected of manhood. With every opportunity you have to take the responsibility that comes upon you, for sure. But it's us also as society to say, let's be fair and let's honestly weigh things and look at each person as an individual. So if you as a woman are complaining about how men are, the question therefore becomes, how are you treating your brothers, the men under your influence in your home, the children you're raising? Are you raising them to be men who are aware of their emotions? And the first reaction most people will have to that is, that's not my responsibility to do.
Because if you want to impact change, you finally have an opportunity with either your children or the relatives around you. But most people, choose to sort of like hands off from the responsibility and then just watch. It's like, when you have a person in the team who doesn't do the assignment and then their job is just to say, but that you people didn't put that thing there, but you people aren't putting this. They're like, you either get to work. Come and get to work.
And then there's some who will say, even just by saying that, they will say, but it's not my responsibility to teach you how to be a man. Okay, fine, it's not. But also it's not your responsibility to point out that I'm not being a man. If you know what a man is supposed to be, then show us. And that changes the narrative we have, because the negative impact that social media is having on manhood is there are guys growing up being told everything they're not, and no one is telling them who to be.
Because I feel like one of the things that I'm now very trying to be a bit more observant on is, now that we know these are the issues, I'm usually more concerned about what are we really doing to okay, we know this is the problem. We've said we are struggling with communication. We said
Yeah.
we're struggling with what, XYZ. What are those particular things that we are doing to ensure that everybody is taking accountability for progress? Are we creating space for you to feel like there's room for you to apply yourself with the skills that you're learning? But also at the same time, there's also the aspect of ensuring that we're also not participating in edifying those that have just bad behavior.
Yeah.
You get?
Yeah.
Because there's a saying I was telling the lady who was doing my makeup in the morning. We're having a conversation and I said, one of the things that even when women complain a lot when it comes to this conversation around men is that we forget some of these men don't feel the need to change because there are women who just endorse their behaviors anyway.
Exactly.
So, and there's a saying that says, if you entertain a donkey for too long, the donkey might start to believe that it's a lion. So by the time this donkey is now meeting people who are like, bruh, you're not a lion, they're still in over their heads. So another thing I wanted to talk about is, so in your book, you talk about All the King's Men is about, the different individuals that a man needs in their life to sort of then have a more wholesome, maybe
Exactly.
wholesome life.
Yeah.
Paint the picture. Like,
so the concept of the book is based on chess. I love chess, used to play chess a lot. I've not played in a while, but the concept behind the book is just realizing how for chess to work well, there are pieces on the board that need to be there. And so I use the pieces on the board to figure out, who does this king in chess need for him to win the game? And so that's the idea. The concept is the people who are, like, for example, in chess, there is the bishop who, if you play chess, but the idea is therefore, spiritually speaking, like, who is there for you spiritually, who talks to you spiritually, and who walks with you spiritually. And the example I give in the book is when David makes a mistake and takes Bathsheba to be his girl. And remember, his boys knew exactly what David was doing.
And they didn't.
They knew what David was doing. In fact, he sent Uriah with a letter to kill himself to his boys. So this guy carried the letter to his boys, and the boys executed the order David gave. They knew exactly what David was doing. But remember, these guys had seen David kill a giant. They had seen David do all this. They had seen David do so many things. Are you going to be the one to actually correct this amazing warrior and the impact that would have on you? But it takes Nathan, who comes and just tells David point blank and in wisdom, my guy, you niched, you messed up here. You did not do it well. You didn't do it right. And so it's the question of who corrects you as a man, and who do you have in your life who is not afraid to tell you when you get things wrong. And then if you look at the Gospel of Mark, there's a story of how this guy is paralyzed on a mat, and it takes his friends to carry him to Jesus. And they don't care that there's so many people there. They break down the roof, lower him to Jesus, because they're like, this is our friend. He is in trouble. He is not okay. We will do everything we can to make sure that he is well and he's healed or he's recovering. And the question therefore becomes, do you have guys who are able to actually be your pallbearers, guys who will carry you on a stretcher when you are unwell and do everything they can in their power to make sure that you come back to that place of being one who can help them with their own stretchers when it's their time. So it's a question in the book of just trying to figure out, do you have certain people around you who are helping you in this journey? People who can advise you, who can correct you, who can challenge you. But then the beauty of the book is it goes back to the idea of when you play chess, when your pawn, which is the weakest piece on the table,
Yeah.
when you take it all the way to the end,
Yeah.
it matures to whatever piece you lost in the past. And so the idea therefore becomes, as a man, who are you pouring into the next generation? Because whoever you're pouring into becomes
The next.
you, and becomes the guy who is a bishop for someone else, and becomes all these other things.
Okay.
So it's a holistic book. It just doesn't look at what you can get, but also what you can give
back to society.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that actually was that I think was pointed out in the book around that this is what it read. Philosophers are still out on the question of who a man is, and then it referenced something that Abraham Heschel had said, but then the conclusion was, it's not about answering the question who a man is, but rather of what, or rather better yet, why. For I have often found that in finding reason and meaning, everything else like falls into place.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to explain that, and in this we had as well in a previous discussion, because we talked about this a lot in previous episodes, is the idea that the main mandate of what a man is comes now from what is in the book of Genesis. And you pointed out that the earth, that he might have dominion and rulership over, and it is not what you are called, but what you answer to that defines you and maps out your destiny. That was like a powerful thing to read. And it says, I therefore submit that a man is king.
Yeah. And the idea is, for example, it doesn't matter how amazing of a man society thinks I am.
Okay.
It counts for nothing if my wife and my daughters live in constant fear of who I am, or live in not knowing where dad is, or do not even know whether I care for them, or I'm proud of them, or I support them, or I'm present with them.
Yeah.
So to the whole world, I could be the most amazing man.
Yeah.
It counts for nothing. It counts for nothing if the people who are in my circle do not feel safe with me, do not feel comfortable with me, do not feel that like they can dream and achieve their dreams, because dad will do everything he can to make sure that we get there. Or my wife does not feel the joy of knowing that she can pursue her dreams, her passions, her desires, with knowing that her husband will be the wind in her sails. So it doesn't matter what the church thinks of me as a pastor. It doesn't. I could be the most amazing, I could give the most amazing sermons on earth, but if I do not live that sermon Monday to Friday,
it means nothing.
It's useless. It's just words on a piece of paper.
Yeah. So since you mentioned, like, there's something, because I want to make sure that when we end this like in a very wholesome. I really wish we were having like a back-to-back episode on this, because we haven't even gotten to half of what you were supposed to talk about. But you've mentioned something with regards to, like, if showing up for your children, and also like your spouse, so that, because these are the closest people who see you on a daily. Here you cannot pretend. You mentioned with regards to, like, if so that your spouse is showing up at fulfilling purpose and all of that. I wanted to ask, one of the things I've been battling with as a question is, there's this whole constant narrative of, there's the whole Proverbs 31 woman, women need to work on being the Proverbs 31 woman, blah, blah, blah. And I would say we are all trying to work towards that. But can you paint the picture of the responsibility of the kind of man that this woman needs? Because I think every man talks about, I want submission, but they fail to understand that this woman that was being described for a specific kind of man.
It is. I love that passage of scripture, because the description of the man in Proverbs 31 is, her husband sits at the gate. Like, it's such a simple statement. He sits at the gate. And if you read it, you could think to yourself, she's doing all this.
And this guy is just
chilling. He's just chilling at the gate. That's all he does.
Yeah.
But that's talking without understanding context.
Yes.
So taking a step back to look at what it means to sit at the gate. Looking back to what cities were before, most cities would be walled cities to protect the city. So it would be, let's say, for example, a city of 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 at most. And they would have walls around the city to protect the city. Now, the weakest point of the wall is a gate. So anytime there would be an attack, the first attack would happen at the gate. Okay? So that's one. But two, anytime there was any dispute, anytime there was anyone who had a problem within the city, they would go to the gate, to the people who are seated at the gate to resolve the issues. That's how the ancient world worked. It's like most parliaments would sit near the gate. So that's where the men of the society would be. So, for example, for you to even imagine that this woman has a man who sits at the gate, he's not just chilling the whole day, he's actually being a protector of the city, he's being a defender of the city, he's being a judge or an adjudicator of the city. It's someone who has made a name for himself within the city, and that's actually what gives her the freedom to become the Proverbs 31 woman. It's someone who has already done all he could in his power to give her the freedom to actually go out and possess the land like she does. So he's not just chilling at the gate, city gates, he's actually being the true definition of what a man was expected to be in that time, day, and age. So the question therefore becomes, it's not a question of how do you become a Proverbs 31 woman, because actually if my wife was a Proverbs 31 woman today, it wouldn't be helpful to me. Okay, and let me clarify, because that's not what I desire of her, and that's not what my family needs of her today. Does that make sense? So there is a danger in actually taking the scripture wholesale and applying it by force in this day and age by taking it out of context. Okay? So, for example, the question of virtue is virtue, meaning virtue in the ancient world is still virtue today.
Now,
so we keep it that way. So that's the constant. So the man who sits at the gate, it's not constant sitting at the gate. That's not the constant. The constant is being able to actually do everything in your power to enable your spouse or your wife to do everything she desires to do in that brings wealth or honor or glory to your family. So that's one thing. So the question is not, does he sit at the gate? Where would I sit at the gate here? But
the gates look different now.
So the question is not, do I sit at the gate? That's not the question, because that's a useless idea for me today. It's the principle. Have I embedded myself in society enough to be the kind of person who society can depend on as a man? That's the more important question. So me saying I want a Proverbs 31 woman is actually me trying again to take a blanket idea as is wholesale and bring it to my wife today and tell her, this is who I want you to be. No. I want her to be who God created her to be. And then the question is, am I doing my best to enable her to be who God called her to be? Who God called her to be. So I'm not trying to mold her into the image of who I want her to be. So let me put it this way. My prayer for my wife is that God would enable me to support her to become everything He desires her to be. That's my prayer for my wife. It's not for me to say, oh, this is who I want you to be. It's actually me praying and asking God, please allow me to be the kind of man that she truly deserves, and allow me to support her in a way that fulfills who you desire. Yeah, exactly.
To wrap up that thing you just said, I've always, because I've met guys who like maybe I dated like years ago, or maybe were trying to hit on me years ago, and not so long ago, I met someone who asked me, do you think that me and you would have worked then? Because now they see the fruit of who I've become now, the evolution. And one of the things, just to point out I wanted to put across a point. One of the things I said to that guy was, if you didn't see my value in its raw form before someone put in the work, before the transformation for it to become.
Yeah.
If I was with you, because you didn't see it, you would have never brought it out.
Yeah.
You get.
Yeah.
And so it's that thing where, like, I think when you're the responsibility that I believe a man has is also to steward and lead your wife into kingdom assignment. And it's not the idea that the whole traditional idea that your wife just comes to fulfill your goals, but also fulfill what goals that God has.
Exactly, but also it's mutual.
Yes.
So it's not just me stewarding her; it's also her stewarding me.
Yes, because she's also a helper.
Oh yeah,
that's a fundamental.
Yeah.
The reason why I was emphasizing on this other one is because society understands women help the vision of a man, but it's like there's this misconception for people who've not fully understood what God's idea was, that you sort of, like, when you get to marriage, you pack yourself. And subconsciously, I've spoken to a couple of women who are married who subconsciously sort of forget themselves or forget the goals and the visions they had before they got into marriage. And unfortunately, we live in a world where, takers will take until they finish. So if you're not with someone who will, pause and say, yo, when we met, you were talking about XYZ and, it doesn't seem to be happening. How do I help you get there?
Yeah.
But yeah, I honestly think, first of all, I'm hoping that you rewrite this book soon.
I'm hoping to.
Yeah, I hope you rewrite. Unfortunately, because of Barak's plan to rewrite the book, there's only very few copies left. But if based off the number that is available, I'll share with you, and then if we can find maybe giveaway, or for those who will have to buy it. We'll share the details. But this was an amazing conversation, and I'm just really wishing that with the studio I would have booked 2 hours because this conversation would have been it's really wholesome, and we've not even scratched half of these things that I wanted us to discuss. But I do hope that this episode has been beneficial to you, and honestly, I'm really grateful that you took the time. Please accept my invite when I invite you again, because as you see, we have not finished everything.
Exactly, and I'd be happy to come back again in humility to say, and part of the reason why I would want to rewrite the book is because I am not the authority on this.
Yes.
And so even as we have this conversation, I truly hope that some of the things I say today were beneficial. And if something was not beneficial, charge it to me, not to the word of God. That was Barak who got it wrong. And I'm constantly growing, and I hope I'll grow and get it better next time.
Yes, guys, we're all growing. The idea of Grace and Glow Up is that as the light of God continues to shine in our lives, is that we become more enlightened, all for the glory of the kingdom of God. So I hope you've been edified, encouraged. If you want to have more conversations and you want to have Barak again, please, share on the comments some of the things you think he shared that are of interest, things you'd want him to discuss more. Please share this with as many men. I am passionate. The reason why I actually have Barak is I know, as much as I'm a woman, I'm really passionate about conversations with men. I tend to have a lot of male friends also, and my friends know this. And so these conversations are really personal, and it's because I don't want to talk about the problem. I want to be part of, like, the solution in whichever way. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't yet subscribed, you know what that does. It helps the channel. You can follow me on Grace and Glow Up, and also on my own personal page, which is Ivy Kashero. Barak, do you have somewhere you'd want people to follow you on social media?
At Al'Mondia. You'll just tag me when you're posting.
Al'Mondia. I'll put his profile as well on the screen. So thank you so much for tuning in. Share, like, subscribe. I love you guys, and may you be blessed, and see you on episode 7. Thank you.